I just want to make one last short video. The other video is really a rationale for the class or for how I approach it as a teacher. But I thought I should, begin to make weekly videos on the readings and the issues they bring up. Obviously, the issue of professionalism and being a professional and the significance of professional ethics, which I've been discussing, is at the heart of Sieghart's essay. But even, I don't even have it in front of me, so I'm not going to do any kind of detailed commentary on what he has to say, except that this is a very good essay for you to read. And I only make that claim because it was a very good essay for me to read. So as a teacher of this course, I think it clarified certain things for me, and I hopefully as a student in this course, it will clarify certain things for you. I don't think I really understood what a profession was meant to be until I read Sieghart's article. As we'll see, next week we'll be reading a response to Sieghart, which seeks to refute everything he says. But so it may be wrong, but at least it sets out in a very helpful way what the basis of professional ethics is, from one man's point of view. And the heart of that is a certain theory of ethics, which is also very helpful. I mean, one of the things that Sieghart says is that ethics begins with human relationships. That is, there's no such thing as ethics until there's a relation between one human being and another. And that, moreover, there's no ethical situation until the interests of those two human beings come into possible conflict. That is, until at least one of those human beings has to make a decision. And for Sieghart, that decision is crucially between selfishness and altruism. Selfishness is just selfishness, right? Selfishness is just doing what appears to be good for you. Altruism is a little bit more complex. I would say that altruism is doing something for the benefit of another at some cost to yourself. And I think both of those things are necessary. That is, an altruistic act is one that is that benefits another being. Let's say, in this case, a human being, just to simplify things. Because, of course, there's all sorts of questions about our possible ethical obligations to other living creatures. But in this case, we're simplifying and just thinking about human beings. An altruistic act has to be one which benefits another human being, but it's not really altruism unless it bears some cost. Some cost. It doesn't have to be drastic cost, but some cost to the doer of the action. And Sieghart's idea is that ethics begins when human beings are faced with that choice. The altruistic thing is, in many cases, the moral thing, the right thing, as opposed to selfishness. The reason that this general theory of ethics is important is because it sets up the basis for professional ethics. Sieghart, I would say the crucial idea in Sieghart is the relationship between professional and client. The terminology would be different, obviously, with a doctor. It'd be the doctor's, his or her patient. But the person for whom the professional is performing the service, and that's the key, right? Service. Sieghart's idea is that the professional, with regard to their client, must always choose altruism and never selfishness. And his reason for that is interesting and is one that next week, as we'll see, Downey, the author of the criticism of this article, takes great issue with. But the key to that, the key to that idea that the professional, with regard to their client, always chooses altruism. That is, always does what's good for the client before what's good for themselves as an individual, is what he calls the gross inequality or gross disproportion of power. The idea is that as a professional in relation to your client, and as you, of course, as an engineer, this is more complicated because the NSPE, as we saw, says you have an obligation to the public as a whole. But Sieghart's thinking more of doctors and lawyers and not thinking of engineers here, although I think it has to apply to engineers too, if indeed they are professionals. But his idea is that in the professional relationship, the relationship between the professional and his or her client or patient or whatever terminology calls for, the professional always has the power, and the client or patient is always, in relation to the professional, vulnerable and weak. And this is because of the special knowledge and skills that the professional has. The patient can't diagnose an illness or propose a treatment. The lawyer's client typically doesn't understand the law or the machinery of justice. And your clients or whoever you're doing your services for, we'll see how complicated that is to try to clear up the terminology there. They don't know what the heck these machines do or these processes do, or how to engineer a software program or how to build a bridge or how to design a chemical process or whatever it is you guys do. The people like me don't understand. So we're vulnerable to you. I mean, I'm the public. You want to know who the public is? Look at me. I'm stupid. All right. Okay. There's nothing politically incorrect in pointing out that in this context, non-engineers are stupid. I'm stupid. I mean, hopefully in some areas I'm not stupid, but in the areas that you are proficient in, I'm stupid. And so, should you choose as a professional, and this applies to engineers, doctors, lawyers, you can take advantage of me. I wouldn't even know it, right? So what Sieghart takes from that is that there's an imperative on the part of professionals to always act in the interest of their clients or patients or the public, and never to do anything that's primarily for their own selfish gain. That's it. Sorry. You signed up for this. Just remember that. You said, I want to be an engineer. I want to go to Drexel and become an engineer. Well, certain things went along with that, whether you knew it or not. And one is, at least according to Sieghart, is that you're signing on to be in service, to be altruistic, to do things primarily for the benefit of others rather than yourself. And the kinds of things that Sieghart obviously has in mind are the kinds of ways in which professionals can financially take advantage of their patients or clients, should they wish. A doctor can enrich him or herself by prescribing unnecessary therapies. A lawyer can enrich him or herself by, say, encouraging a client to engage in a fruitless lawsuit. Engineers can, take advantage of people in financial ways because the people who they're working for or other people involved simply don't understand the technological processes that the engineer does. So that's incredibly important. Now, it may not be true, but for Sieghart, it's incredibly important, that disproportion of power. And for him, that means that the professional, there's no choice. That the professional obviously needs to make a living to continue to practice, but that cannot be their prime goal, right? In practicing. It has nothing to do with why you became an engineer. If you became an engineer to earn a good living, that's fine. If you became an engineer to get rich, that's fine. It has nothing to do with your motives for becoming an engineer. It has to do with what your goals are as an engineer, right? I hope that distinction is clear. And you can be the most selfish, money-loving person in the world. As long as it doesn't taint your decisions in actually practicing engineering, it's completely irrelevant. What is relevant is that whatever you do as an engineer, you cannot do it primarily to, in some way or another, enrich or otherwise benefit yourself.